I've always loved the concept of Dungeons & Dragons, the legendary tabletop role-playing game that is still going strong today. The premise is simple. You and some friends take on the roles of characters in a fantasy setting world. One of you becomes a dungeon master, which is part referee, part storyteller, guiding the adventure, narrating the world, playing every monster and voicing every character your party encounters. It's pure imagination with dice. Thanks to D&D's success, it wasn't long before we started to see spin-offs everywhere, from books to video games and even movies. For me, my first real taste of that world came through the fighting fantasy books by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. These were amazing choose-your-own adventure stories where you were the hero. You'd read a short passage of text and then you'd face a choice. Do you enter the dark corridor or open the ornate chest? Each decision sent you to a different page, shaping your journey. You even rolled dice to build your character's stats, skill, stamina and luck. Just like D&D, those numbers decided your fate in combat and problem solving. Honestly, I cannot praise these books enough, but that is a topic for another video. So why am I bringing up D&D and fighting fantasy? Well, in the 1980s, we were spoiled with a TV show that brought that same sense of adventure to life. Yes, that show was Knightmare. Knightmare was conceived by Tim Child in 1985. His inspiration came from early video games like Attic Attack and Dragon Talk on the ZX Spectrum. He figured if a home computer could generate fantasy worlds, why couldn't television do the same? So he teamed up with artist David Rowe, who created beautifully airbrushed backdrops, realistic yet dreamlike, giving the show a kind of video game aesthetic years before CGI became a mainstream. To make it work, Child borrowed the same blue screen technique used in weather forecasts at the time. He transformed Studio A at Anglia Television into what became known as the Blue Room. Using cutting-edge chroma key technology from the Travelling Matte Company and their £85,000 Supernova graphics system, they could overlay digital environments, lighting effects and even animated creatures in real time. Robert Harris, who ran the company, brought experience from CGI and live TV graphics on shows like Newsnight and Panorama, experience that proved crucial to pulling off Knightmare's ambitious visual tricks. Under the working title Dungeon Doom, the first pilot, just 15 minutes long, was filmed. Even then, Hugo Myatt was on board as Treguard, the dungeon master figure who guided the players. Myatt actually got involved because his wife, Christine Webber, was a presenter at Anglia TV. After a few tweaks and a name change, the second pilot was ready. Tim Child submitted it to ITV's Children's Committee in early 1986. And they immediately commissioned 8 half-hour episodes. Knightmare hit UK screens on the 7th of September 1987 and instantly captured imaginations across the country. It mixed fantasy role-playing, early computer graphics and game show tension into something completely new. Each episode would feature a team of 4 children, usually aged between 11 to 16. One would become the Dungeoneer, wearing the iconic Helmet of Justice, which blocked their vision. This clever prop gave the illusion that they were wandering through dangerous digital worlds, when in reality they were just standing in a large blue studio. The remaining 3 players, or the advisors, they would sit with Treguard watching the action unfold on monitors. They could see everything: the environment, the traps, the life force meter, which was a digitised face that decayed as time ran out or when damage was taken. When the helmet and the flesh were gone and only the skull remained, it was game over. The advisors would guide their teammate through puzzles, traps and encounters with live action characters. Some were friendly, others not so much.
Ah, at last a familiar sight. But hurry, team, for the long journey and recent fright have left Gavin seriously short of energy. Get the food first, for he needs it.
Gavin, there's a table to the right of you. Get the food.
Come round the other side.
Round the other side. Go. Round the other side.
That's right.
There's a face
Warning, team, manifestation. This is an unfamiliar guardian, so take special care.
And time was always against the players. The life force slowly depleted unless they found food or reached certain checkpoints. Complete all 3 dungeon levels and the team would win. It could be trophies, it could be medals or even t-shirts, but the actual prize was the eternal bragging rights. Because the show wasn't easy. Out of all the teams that entered the dungeon, only 8 ever won across the show's entire series. Hugo Myatt's Treguard of Dunshelm became the heart of the show. He was part mentor, part storyteller and occasionally part troll. In later seasons he was joined by companions. From season 4 there was Pickle, who was an elf played by David Lerner, and later Majida, a genie-like princess played by Jackie Suarez. They added humour, warmth and a little moral support, especially for nervous younger players. As the series went on, Treguard evolved from a neutral host into a more active ally, often referencing the powers that be versus the opposition, a subtle touch that deepened the world's lore. Knightmare ran until 11th of November 1994, but its influence never really faded. It was exported abroad. There was a French show and a Spanish show, which ran from 1990 to 91 in France and in Spain until 94. An American pilot called Lords of the Game was produced, but it was never picked up, partly because NTSC television couldn't handle the same blue screen technology and precision as our PAL region. But there were some differences between the UK show and the proposed American show. Most of the same cast were used, apart from Hugo Myatt as the Dungeon Master. In the American version, the DM was called Chad, and he had an advisor named Virginia. Tim Child explained in an interview, "Lords of the Game was a lot more like Knightmare, but in common with the French and Spanish variants. My distributors had convinced me that a US network would not stand for rolling gameplay, i.e. it had to be one game or one team per show, win, lose or draw. I hated this because it just puts us on par with things like the Crystal Maze, which I did not regard as true adventure gaming. Lords was quite good, but still non-satisfactory for that reason." Child went on further to say, "The pilot was not successful. US production companies being terrified of chroma key based shows because of the technical complexity, and they weren't prepared to cope with blue screen issues with less lines and NTSC." Knightmare's popularity also spawned 2 video games, one in 1987 for systems like the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64, and another in 1991 for the Amiga and the Atari ST. There were also several Knightmare novels written by author David Morris, who was known for his fantasy game books in the same vein as the Fighting Fantasy series. Knightmare was truly ahead of its time, blending fantasy storytelling, emerging CGI and interactive gameplay into something we had never seen before. It captured everything that made being a kid in the 80s magical: imagination, adventure and that feeling that you could be the hero. After its final episode, Knightmare lived on through reruns on the Sci-Fi Channel in the mid-90s, though few in the UK were able to watch as the Sci-Fi Channel was unavailable for UK viewers at the time and satellite TV was still in its infancy in the UK. In 2012, fan James Orkett created a brilliant 25th anniversary documentary featuring interviews with Tim Child, Hugo Myatt, artist David Rowe and several contestants, and if you haven't seen it, it's well worth your time. I will leave a link to that video in the description. Even now, decades later, Knightmare holds a special place in the hearts of those who grew up watching it. An incredible mix of fantasy, technology and television magic. So let me know in the comments below, did you grow up watching Knightmare or did it pass you by? And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, please remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more 80s nostalgia right here on Back to the 80s.